And we're going to start this episode with focusing on a division that Adam knows all about, and that is the NFC North and the race for it, because it is really, really starting to heat up now. Who is going to come out on top? Who is going to be the king in the North? And the NFC North, I mean, the weekend just gone. Like I said, I know we're a few days late, but the Detroit Lions beat the Dallas Cowboys 44-30. Smashed. I mean, what a game that was. It was a fantastic game to watch for the neutral. The Vikings, you talk about smash. I mean, 44-30 is not really a smash, but it was a, a big scoreline, I suppose. But Vikings did smash Commanders 31-0. And then there was an in-division game between the Bears and the your Green Bay Packers that you won 28-21, which starts the division now at Packers at 9-3-1, the Bears second 9-4, Lions 8-5, and the Vikings 5-8. I mean, I think, Adam, when this season even started, we said this division is going to be pretty. It's going to be pretty amazing. And actually, the problem has been that we thought the Bears were going to be that bottom team where the Vikings probably on the same sort of record as the Vikings as well, like 5-8, and that the Vikings would be sort of maybe 8-5, 9-4, the Lions being 9-4, Packers sort of fighting out for that division. But it's been the Vikings who have dropped off this year, which we've from the bad quarterback play. I mean, it's bad. I know they beat the Vikings, the Commanders, but the Commanders, I mean, Jaden Daniels came out the game with injury. The defense is carrying them. They do have some star guys like Justin Jefferson, but like they are not really fundamentally a good team at this point. And then the other three, I mean, it is a fun battle to watch. I know it might not be for you as a Packers fan, but for the neutral, well, for a fellow divisional North supporter, I suppose, it's nice to see the other North division playing really well, whereas my North division is just turgid.
Yeah, it's yeah, I think the surprise package this year has been the Bears and just how far they have been able to move from where they were last year, which was basically 5-12, struggling, not really doing much. Brand new head coach comes in and just has really turned everything around and has made such a huge impact on this team. It, I still maintain I think that they're in a bit of a false position. I think that they've had some I suppose not luck. I think that's unfair, but I think that they've probably the reason they're where they are is because of the schedule that they've had, and some of the teams that they've played have been a lot easier than say like what the Packers have played or the Lions.
I've got that here. I mean, they beat the. This is from week 2. They were 2-0 playing Vikings and Lions. They played Dallas. They won that convincingly. Won
Mhm.
that as well. They just edged past by a point to the Raiders. They had a very early bye week in 5. They 1 point, the exact same score against the Commanders, 25-24. They smashed the Saints. I mean, those Saints have been valiant. People are smashing the Saints. They then lost to the Ravens, beat the Bengals, beat the Giants, beat the Vikings, beat the Steelers, beat the. I think the Eagles is the outlier. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
one. Even though we would say the Eagles are not playing to last season's Eagles or last season playoff run Eagles, I should say, back half the season into the Super Bowl. That's the outlier win where I go, all right, that's made my eyebrows raise now that this Bears
Yeah.
team's pretty. There's something legit about this team, or maybe about Ben Johnson, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I mean, I would say I think just the combination of beating the Steelers and the Eagles week after week, I think is I know that the Steelers have not had the greatest of seasons, but I think the combination of the two together is quite impressive, and so that's good. But as you say, when you look at that, okay, so you've got a Vikings team with what JJ McCarthy, not great. So and you're beating them. The Giants,
Only
you know,
beaten by 2 as well, the Vikings, and
yeah,
then they beat
yeah.
the
I
Giants by
mean,
4.
the Giants is the number one pick at the moment for next year's draft. The Bengals without Joe Burrow, the Ravens they lost to, the Saints have been bad. The Commanders without Jaden Daniels, the Raiders have been bad. The Cowboys back in week 3, where their defense has changed quite dramatically after the trade deadline. So, I mean, there's a lot of sort of favourable matchups here where it's kind of gone quite well, and a lot of one score wins, which we said this about the Vikings last year, didn't we? They had a lot of one-score wins, and you can't have that all the time. And it feels like what has happened to the Vikings is they've lost a lot of that now. And obviously, with the quarterback problems, that's why. But with the Bears, they're getting them one-score wins, and that's why they're where they are. So
Mm.
I do feel that it's a little bit of a false record, not by much, but a little bit. And I think that if you look at the betting odds for this division, the Packers are basically 5-2 on. So, stick 5 quid on, you only get £2 extra back. The Chicago Bears are basically 3-1. So that, and then the Lions are further because obviously they're not on the same record, sort of. So it does feel very much that the Packers should win this. That's kind of
Mm.
where we're at, I think, with the NFC North. But it's still, obviously it's still very tight at the moment.
Just to put that in context as well, the Packers are at Denver, at
Yeah,
Chicago, hosting the Ravens, and then at Minnesota. We just said Chicago. Well, we said Chicago's full schedule, but then they are hosting the Browns, hosting the Packers, at San Francisco, hosting the Lions, and then the Lions are at the Rams, hosting the Steelers, at the Vikings, at the Bears. I mean, the Vikings aren't going to win this division. We'll leave them out of this, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a lot of playing each other. I mean, Green Bay, two division games. Well, all of them are going to be two division games, aren't they? And then the out division game, I suppose, is Green Bay have got Denver and Baltimore.
yeah.
Chicago have got Cleveland and San Francisco. And the Lions have got Rams and Steelers. And to be honest with you, I would probably say the Lions have the easy. People will go, "Oh, the Browns," but you've got to deal with the Browns' defense, though. That's what people always get wrong with that. Is that yeah, the Browns have nothing offense. Yeah, they don't. But the Browns have a very, very, very good defense, and that's where you can slip up. And where they've had a good defense all season, and they've still got the record that they have. So
Yeah.
it doesn't overcome everything, and the Bears are on a bit of a heater right now. I know they've just lost to Green Bay, but before that, Vikings, Steelers, Eagles, they're on a bit of a heater. It was a close game with the Packers as well. It was a fun game as well. It was incredibly competitive. I think the Lions, they play the Rams. I think the Rams they're not shaky, but they have their moments in a way. I don't know. They I still believe though that I still believe they'll go to the NFC Championship and maybe get to the Super Bowl. But then you're playing the Steelers, who are, I mean, they're fighting for the division, but they're not a good team. So I've got it as the division ended up with. I've got it as I think the Packers will win it 11-5-1. The Bears will be
Okay.
11-6, and the Lions will be 10-7. Is that about what you
So
have measured
basically,
up
you're saying that they all win two and lose two,
there? Yeah, pretty much for yeah, all three of them. That's
which
all
I
four.
think is probably a fair assessment. Because to be
Yeah,
honest, when you actually look at who these teams have got to play, it does kind of feel like there's not actually that many easy games here. Um, yeah, I think that the Packers I would say the Packers are better than the Ravens, and I'd say the Packers are better than the Vikings. So I'd say they're two wins. But going away to Denver is tough, and going away to Chicago will be tough as well. Because as we just saw, they only just beat them. The fact is the Bears had a chance to sort of like level that up or go for the win. So it was just a bad throw at the end. But it's like they had the chance to do it. So I think it feels like the Packers will end up with 11. Um, the Lions have obviously got to play the Rams, which is the Rams away. I think is tough, and that's going to be difficult. And then you have got a case of the Steelers, the Vikings, and the Bears. I mean, I would expect them to get at least one out of them three. So probably the Vikings, they definitely win. I expect them to get one out of the Steelers and the Bears. And then obviously the Bears, I would expect them to beat the Browns. And I think the Packers could go either way. I think the Lions one could go either way and the 49ers could go either way. So yeah, I think you're probably right where they all kind of to a certain extent, they've all kind of got what feels like one easy game. well, not easy, but one game that they definitely should win, and then
Yeah,
3 games that are kind of coin flips, and you feel like they probably definitely get 1 win out of them 3.
yeah.
So going 2 and 2 in the last 4 weeks probably is what they could all end up doing. I don't
In,
think that's crazy at
in
all.
that scenario, do you think all three get to the playoffs then? Because
I
in my
think
head, I go Lions at 10. I'm not sure Lions 10 and maybe that. I mean, you then look at who they've lost to later earlier in the season. I mean, they beat a fair amount of NFC teams who they may be competing. I don't know if that is that how it then. If say if the Cowboys, I'm just this is just in makeup world, but say if Lions and Cowboys finish on the same record, but and the same division record, but they beat the Cowboys, and does the division record then count first? Because they
um,
don't play head to head. That
yeah,
surely is what it is, isn't it?
I'm not overly sure, but I mean, I suppose it depends who it is because the Lions have played the Cowboys and
Yeah,
beaten
that's what
them.
I'm saying is that and then beat them. So would they then go ahead? But then let's say the Cowboys are 2-4 in division, but the Lions are 4-2 in division. Is it because the Lions are 4-2 in their own division to then get go ahead? I don't know. But being on the Lions, do you think they're getting a bit of a bad rap at the minute? Because I feel like that no one. I feel like we unfairly, everyone thinks how they've just rose to be this sort of juggernaut out of nowhere, and how many games they won last season, and the progression they've made. Like everyone, I think just thinks like, oh well, they're going to win 10+ games, and you're like, well, yeah, other teams figure you out, and and the Lions, but like lost both coordinators, and of course they weren't going to be as good. But almost people are like sort of shitting on them for that. Like, oh, well, you're not that good because you lost both coordinators, therefore you're bad now. And well, they've still won 8 games. Like, they're still good and they've been competitive and they have some notable wins against big teams like Baltimore, like Tampa, and Dallas. Last week's game against Dallas, as last weekend's game against Dallas is we just said earlier about Dallas at the start of the season were not the team they are now because they've been on fire recently. I don't know. I think it's a little unfair. I think it's a little. I think it's more like you lost 2 coordinators and you've overcome that to have a good record. Like, is that? I don't know. Am I being a bit sympathetic there? I suppose.
No, no, I don't think so. To be honest, I don't think they've done anything that we didn't expect was going to happen. I felt like at the beginning of the season, we were all coming out saying they're going to be a really good team, but they will drop off. They will not go 14 and 3. They won't have that record because you've just lost your offensive coordinator and your defensive coordinator. We saw this with the Eagles, didn't we? Back in, well, I think was it 2022? Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon both left, and the next year they obviously they won the Super Bowl with them too. The next year they struggled a bit and they didn't win the Super Bowl, and they sort of like they made it into the playoffs. The reason being is obviously because that division just isn't or wasn't as good as what the
Still
Lions are
dominate.
facing here. That's the difference. But in reality, it's like the same thing basically happened. We reckon they go 2 and 2 for these next 4 games. They're gonna end up with 10 wins. I think most of us projected 11 wins for them. So maybe you could argue it's
Mm,
slightly off, but not by a lot. So I kind of feel like they've done pretty much what we thought they would,
mm,
and it wouldn't surprise me if they do a similar thing to what the Eagles did last year, which is kind of go, we promoted from within. It hasn't really worked. I mean, the OC clearly it hasn't worked. Dan Campbell's taken the job of play calling away from him. So it's like I
yeah.
think what they might do is in the off season get themselves a top offensive coordinator to come in and do that, and then you might find that the next year they end up going back up to becoming like a 13, 14 win team again. So
Mm.
I think you're right that people are maybe being a little bit harsh on them, and that in reality
It's
it's not
it's
a surprise.
unrealistic. It's unrealistic expectations, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
the Bears now go with 11 wins this season. Suddenly, you're like, well, next season we need to be a 10 plus win team. And you're like, well, or maybe
But their
we do better
schedule's
than
gonna be
10.
so much harder next year.
Exactly. It's going to change. Things are going to change. You're not going to be guaranteed. It's a testament to the good teams that win 10 plus games every year is they are good teams. I'm not saying Chicago
Yeah,
isn't a good team. I'm just saying the expectation is, oh, well, you finished on 11 wins. The expectation is we get 12, 13 wins next season. You're like, well, I would say the expectation is you should win the division. That's my
mm,
more thing. It's not, don't look at how many wins, win the division and maybe challenge for that top seed. That's what the expectation should be. And if you fall short of that, okay, that's fine. Falling short of not being of being the top seed in the NFC isn't bad. I think you could then be a little bit miffed if you don't win the division. You could go, this the progression is we finish second, we keep it competitive the whole time. Next season we should try and win the division. Next season we try and get the NFC top seeding, and then of course they then get into that conversation where you go, well, you got the Super Bowl window, so to speak. Now it's going to feel like it's going to be open for a while because of Caleb Williams and his age, and that they've got a fairly young defense. They've got fairly young offensive weapons as well. I think they will probably upgrade. They may look to upgrade on DeAndre Swift in the off season, though he's been fantastic. You could go, well, we could get cheaper in that area, but better, I suppose, if you wanted to go someone who was younger in the draft or in free agency, because clearly now with Ben Johnson and his offenses he's running in Detroit and in Chicago, it is a plug in and put anyone there scenario,
yeah,
and they run well. Jamal Williams ran really well there. David
yeah.
Montgomery ran well there. And I'm not saying David Montgomery ain't a good player; he's a good player. Jameer Gibbs has been phenomenal, and even without Ben Johnson, he's been phenomenal. But he was not the true number one when Ben Johnson was there, even last season. This season, he is the true number one. Montgomery is taking the back seat this year, and you've seventh round draft pick in Carmen Ungai. Like, look at he might even be the starter next year. You know what I mean? He
Yeah.
might even go. He's got something about him. And I mean, lucky for me, but picked him up in fantasy football. Just saying, and might be able to get some good trade value in the upcoming draft if there's any of our fellow league members listening or watching this. Um, so you're confident your Packers going to win this?
Yeah, I pretty much am now. I do feel like it's a 2-2 kind of scenario for for all three of these teams. That's probably where they're going to end up being, and obviously that gets them through as winning the division. I don't think they get the number one seed. I think the Rams will hold
I
on for that and get the number one seed. And having looked at the standings just now, I think it's going to be tough for if all three teams do go 2-2, it's going to be tough for the Lions to get in the playoffs because you've got, I mean, the
Denver,
Seahawks,
San
you've got
Francisco.
the
Oh no, sorry.
Seahawks, the 49ers, and the Bears at the moment who are 10-3, 9-4, 9-4. Um, Obviously, if the Bears go 2-2 and the Lions go 2-2, then the Bears get in. The Seahawks have already got 10, and you have to imagine they're going to win another game easily, like in the last four. And the 49ers, if they get more than one, and I think the 49ers are a team as well who could quite easily go 2-2. So I do feel like the Lions probably will miss out on it.
And you can't say I don't think, yeah, it's upsetting, but I think for the
It's
last
just
few
a
years,
division. That's all it
yeah,
is.
for the last
Yeah.
few years that you've had, like, I mean, God, the NFC is just, it's a fun side of the football at the minute, a really fun side of
Oh,
the football.